my dear Bagginses and Boffins.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We have a piece of news that I think is going under the radar because most criticisms for the Lord of the Rings of Power, tend to be geared towards either the look of characters, the set design, or even the story. I mean, we've criticized the idea of not having the rights to the story a couple times on this channel. But here's one that people have almost glossed over in their rush to criticize the look of the dwarves, especially the female dwarves. And as this article starts out, it talks about how the harsh criticism tends to be geared towards female dwarves not having beards. And for me, it's also there was something a little lackluster in some of their outfits versus looking back at Gimli's outfit. But those are all aesthetic choices that people might have different opinions on. But one you can't have an opinion on is the established Tolkien lore. And as this article points out, and as something that I've glossed over myself, the idea that the Rings of Power is going to have both Durin the Third and Durin the Fourth appear as father and son. And it's a problem for two reasons. Number one, they were not father and son. They were not related in that way. And number two is that the reason they're not father and son is because they can't be father and son. And the way that the name Durin is established is the dwarves believe that Durin was a reincarnation of the previous Durin, going back to the first. And so you could never have two Durins alive at the same time. And so this, combined with the father and son not being Durin, is a completely lore-breaking moment for the dwarves. And I think this is getting a lot less play than the looks. And I'm just curious to see what you think of this sort of problem.
Just when you mentioned the reincarnation of the last Durin, it reminds me of why is it leaving me? The Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is always supposed to be a reincarnation
That's
of
right.
the last Dalai Lama.
That's right.
And they go, every time the Dalai Lama dies, they go look for the next one that's born around the same time the last one died, and to get the new Dalai Lama. But
which is
actually,
so weird. Imagine going up and like talking to some kid to say you're the next Dalai Lama. It's such a weird.
But anyway, it's lore breaking, and that's exactly what they said they wouldn't do. So that's a problem.
Yeah, and I'm surprised this got signed off on. Now, the reason, and I just obviously showed it on screen here, but the reason that I believed that they got away with this is because of how condensed they are making the show. So they are spanning a lot of time down into these 5 seasons, and they're trying to get as much packed in as possible. To do that, and to be accurate to the characters that did the actions, they would have to include both Durins and squish them together so that they're father and son. So the question becomes to fans, so I guess I'm posing it to ourselves, is it better they do it this way and get the names right for the characters and what they do during these events, or should they have just not even done Durin 3 and Durin 4, maybe just had a generic Durin and have them do both? Or like have them do all of it, all of the stuff that the Durins do with throughout this timeline. Just have one guy do it all and be the fill-in for whatever Durin is doing that in that moment in the real lore. Either way, you are kind of messing with the lore, but this way, you're like the way I've just described, you're not breaking it because you're saying that a Durin did this, not two Durins that are father and son doing it together. So, I don't know. Both kind of seem weird. I can kind of see why they did it this way, but I disagree with their choice on this. I think this is going to be such a mess, especially considering this really cool lore background for dwarven almost religion, in that Durin is a reincarnation that is birthed to lead the dwarves. And so now it just, to me, this actually ruins any use of the name in subsequent or even previous works for people, right? So say people
Yeah.
watch The Rings of Power, then they go and watch the original trilogy and see Gimli find Durin's axe and use it. Well, now it's just some random Durin. It's nothing, right? Like it's there's no big, oh, that's one of those mythical Durins, right? There's no more of that. It's now just some axe. So I don't know. To me, I think this is a huge mistake. I didn't realize. Um, so I remembered us talking about them being father and son and how that was a problem. I think we mentioned that. I didn't realize they were going to have them both be alive at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? I thought what they were going to do was have a father Durin who died, and then they were going to skip a generation to try to establish the timeline, and get the next Durin out, and basically make it seem like Durin is a reincarnation still, but that it can go from father to son, in some weird way. Like I don't know. Like I thought maybe they would at least try that, but to have them be both alive at the same time, doing things at the same time together, that is such a weird thing to decide to do.
I mean, they shouldn't be condensing that much in if that's also a problem, right?
That too. Like this is their show. They designed it, like you said. Like they have the choice to either fixate on certain moments and maybe have time jumps between seasons.
Yeah.
But you're right. This is their choice, so they get no slack from us. And like I said before we even started this, that as much as I want to try and find, an explanation, I still think this is a really silly thing to do, and I've talked at length, and I'm even planning on doing a big video closer to the date where I talk about the dwarves, but I'm really excited to see dwarves. We have not seen dwarves in very many Lord of the Rings media. We don't see it in The Hobbit very much. We see the dwarves, but we don't see their lifestyle outside of their adventure to reclaim their mountain. We don't see it in Lord of the Rings at all. We see Gimli, and we go to Moria, but Moria is old and decrepit. We don't even, there's no other living dwarves. So, to me, getting the dwarves right is one of the focal points for me, because I've already seen the elves done brilliantly. I've already seen the hobbits done brilliantly. And I've seen the humans done brilliantly. We have no dwarves. I want the dwarves to be done brilliantly. So at least we have the dwarves through the Rings of Power to look at and say, look at how cool that is. I'm really worried the dwarves, they have not shown us anything. None of the trailers have the dwarves other than they're smashing rocks. We've got no dialogue from the dwarves. We have one moment where the female dwarf is singing, and she has no beard, and I don't really like the design of her garb. I don't think it is
It doesn't look very dwarven, yeah.
No, and I've explained this away by saying that maybe she's blending in, or maybe it's a celebration or some sort of maybe her gown or whatever she's wearing is some sort of ritual thing, like how we have in our society, either through church, or even if you go like judges or graduation, we sort of wear these very outdated pieces of wardrobe. But I'm trying to explain away these problems, but they shouldn't be problems that need to be explained away. I don't know why they had to make these things so controversial. All you had to do to sell, the dwarves to me are the easiest thing to do, because there are no dwarves already in film that from Lord of the Rings. So there's nothing to, you don't have to make them your own. They are your own no matter what you do. The elves and the humans, because you don't have the rights to Peter Jackson's movies and their props, you have to come up with similar-ish looking ideas and have them be used in ways that make the audience who are fans of Lord of the Rings recognize them, but at the same time make them not the same so that you don't get sued. So to me, that's a way harder thing to do, and I think they're doing a pretty good job when it comes to the elves and the humans, from what I've seen. The dwarves, though, they keep screwing it up, and there's no competition. You just have to dress them to look kind of like Gimli a bit. That's it.
Yeah.
Like I'm just so confused why the dwarves seem to be so hard. You don't need to go over the top for the dwarves to make them look good for people who are trying to look at dwarves. Like it's going to look fine as long as it looks like we've seen The Hobbit where they have some dwarves and what they're wearing. We've seen Gimli, and that's it. That's all you need. Like you have everything there. Just don't copy Gimli's helmet, and you're good. Like that's the only thing that you probably would get in trouble for because it's such a remarkable piece that it's so identifiable. Anyone watching this could point out if someone's got Gimli's helmet.
Yeah.
But other than that, you don't have to do much. You can even use similar ideas, and that was my first criticism of this woman's metal ornament here, is that, yes, it's a triangle, which I get it. Triangles are strong, but it doesn't have the same interlocking kind of structure that if you look at Gimli's helmet, it has, say. And so to me, it's just a little bit off the mark from what would be ornamental dwarven looking things. This kind of looks a little too human to like a little like obviously the people creating this are humans, so it's going to be hard for them to go outside that, but we have examples that they can turn to, so I don't know. I think that I'm now starting to get worried about the dwarves, and I thought early on that the dwarves would be the easiest thing to do to get right. Like there's no worry of them screwing up the dwarves. It's really the humans and the elves that we have to worry about. But I'm now starting to get more worried about the dwarves than I am about the humans and elves. I'm actually okay with a lot of what the elves are wearing for the most part. But yeah, that's this kind of lore breaking thing. It's something that we were told is not happening, and we would be able to look at this and see that while they did add some plot points and condensed some moments into quicker succession, that it would still make sense within the greater Tolkien universe and collective works. This is going to screw that up completely for the dwarves. Now, maybe people just don't care about dwarves. Maybe it's just me and a handful of other people who like to hate on the Rings of Power. I personally really like the dwarves. I really want them to do dwarves justice here, and I'm getting worried. But yeah, I think that's it for this one. Let us know in the comments down below what you guys think. I kind of know what people are going to think on this one from our previous comments. So, what other than this one big lore breaking thing, is anything else really comparable, I guess is the question. If they fixed this lore breaking thing where you have two Durins that are father and son, would it be okay with people if this was completely fixed and they did away with this? I know some people are going to be still upset, but my question is this really, like, if they fix this, is it at least watchable at that point for some people? Because I think this is really going to turn off some of the more hardcore fans.
Yeah, it's
So,
gonna, and I'm sure other people have been saying this, but yeah, if they're breaking lore, there's gonna be a lot of people who are just gonna say this is all just Amazon's fan fiction, and it's not Lord of the Rings.
yep, that's right. And that they can't have that because, without the hardcore fans watching this, I don't know. It's going to be hard to pump up the casual fans, I think. I think a lot of the casual fans, to turn them into more hardcore fans, you do need people talking on YouTube. You need articles being written. And if people just start tuning it out because, like you said, it's fan fiction, we might see something similar to what Disney's currently experiencing with the MCU and Star Wars, where people are just like, they're done with it. It's not good. So
I
really
mean,
hope that's not true.
I've always been overwhelmed by the MCU, but
yeah.
I mean, I think I'm in a minority. I like the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, I talking to the wrong person if I want to hate on Star Wars right now. But we can at least join in and say the MCU is kind of a mess right now. And my worry is that we're going to see something similar to this, where it's almost going to hit really hard early on. People are going to be hyped, and it's going to die off real quick because people are going to just start noticing things that take them out of Lord of the Rings, and it's just some generic fantasy show that they would rather skip. And yeah, it has Lord of the Rings name on it, but does that make it Lord of the Rings to them? And ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to. And so, the Dwarves for me was one way to really make it stand out as Lord of the Rings, because to there was nothing to worry about in terms of pre-established looks or anything. You could make it your own, and as long as you kind of were in keeping with the themes already established by the other film and television and the books, like, you really had a lot of room to wiggle, so to speak. Whereas the elves and humans, a lot of that clothing and hobbits too, to some extent, like even the hobbits here kind of look different than what we're used to, but we go along with it because we know hobbit culture, and we know that not all of them lived the way Frodo did, for example. We know some of them did live a little bit more in a woodsy type outdoor environment, where they a lot more kind of a farmer culture, whereas Frodo was a well-off hobbit who wasn't out in the fields, for example.
Yeah, and then you had the Smeagol type of hobbits that were fishing.
That's right. Yep. And
these,
just the fact that they lived, like, some of the humans that lived near them, were almost.
but I mean, we're
similar.
going back to that trailer. If you look at our other video, they do go on, that one hobbit lady does go on that same sort of stuff we see in the Fellowship, where it's like, we're safe here, we're in our own world, what happens outside of our area is irrelevant to us. So they're playing on that exact same motif, I guess you could
That's
call
right.
it.
That's right. Exactly. And I think we're gonna see that a lot. We see it a little bit with the elves too. You mentioned the previous trailer, where you've got elves kind of talking about, it's time to, put down the sword and just kind of rest, and, like, we don't need to intervene in the outside world. Just being a very isolationist type culture. And a lot of those themes, it's really good to keep them going, because, like you said, we've already seen them established in the other works. You can make them your own, and it does give us that bridge to them. But with dwarves, there is no bridge needed. Like, you are going to be making Tolkien's dwarves in this show. There is no other dwarves really to look to. I know there's the Hobbit and Gimli, but we don't see dwarven culture, and that's sort of what I think is going to be their make or break when it comes to these dwarves, because they've got a lot of explaining to do in terms of the beard, in terms of the what they're wearing, and in terms of their culture and how they interact, because we have stories of how they interact. And in The Hobbit, we get a titch of it, where we get a little bit of dwarf elf conflict, and we understand a little bit more why it's so deep for them to distrust each other. But we really have never seen the dwarves on their, like, being their own culture and how that flourishes. So really, this is going to be, like, when I watch this show and then I go back and watch the original trilogy, I'm imagining Gimli coming from whatever I'm about to see. Like, that's just going to happen.
Sure. Yeah.
I need it to make sense. It can't be a bunch of weirdos running around doing stuff that doesn't feel dwarvish.
So, like, the series can't end with, like, oh, we're gonna be dwarves and elves, we're gonna be friends forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Can't end like that.
yeah, because then the very first line that a dwarf speaks in the original trilogy is "never trust the ring in the hands of an elf." Okay, so we need that. That has to continue. I need that to be prevalent here.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that in The Hobbit, the dwarves do go and meet Elrond. They do not trust him and they want to leave right away. They then go and meet Legolas's family and his father. They do not like him. In fact, they hate him, and they want to leave right away. Elrond is gonna go up to these dwarves, and they better want him out. Like, they want him to leave right away. That is what I need to happen, and I also need Gimli to come from that culture and have that kind of be a part of him, so that when he says that, it makes sense to me. And so whatever they put on screen is going to, unfortunately, for me, I know it's going to. I'm going to try hard maybe to have it not to if I don't like it, but it's going to influence how I view the other established works. And I think that's the same for a lot of people, and I think that's why people are so protective of these movies from a long time ago, or I guess not that long, but like a little while ago. I think that's why Star Wars fans are so upset when things don't go the way they feel they should from the pre-established canon, and I think that's going to be the same thing with the Lord of the Rings fans who grew up on the original trilogy. They were maybe lukewarm, or maybe some of them really enjoyed the Hobbit trilogy despite its differences, but at least it had a lot of overlap. Like the swords, the armor, like there was a lot of overlap where you could legit point to items and say, that's the same item from the other trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So here, we're not going to get that, but we're going to get some of the cultural influences that then establish what we then come to see in The Hobbit and then the original trilogy. So, I think it's really going to impact how I view those other ones. I'm not going to never watch the other ones again if this sucks, but all it's going to do is it's going to make me joke about or maybe find humor in some of those moments that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like you said, if Gimli doesn't, if the dwarves don't hate elves at the end of this, I'm gonna joke that it's such a weird turn for Gimli to show up at this meeting and yell at elves, despite his family bringing him up in a pro-elf society.
And wasn't Elrond the elf we all like?
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe he came.
Elrond's gonna have to there's gonna be something anti-dwarf. Yeah, there's gonna be something that the dwarves are not gonna like about him.
Well, the thing is, if you look at the Hobbit, he's pretty nice to them.
Yeah.
And they just don't trust elves, but they are more open to him. So there is something there in the Hobbit that would let me believe that Elrond and Elrond alone is able to bridge that culture gap somehow. And this show could set up a very good way that happens, where he stays with them for a while, which we know happens in Tolkien's written works. And he is able to show that there are some good elves or something like that to the dwarves. And so when he calls them, they come, but they didn't realize that Legolas and all these other weirdo wood elves are going to be there. so that it makes sense in that context. But yeah, they have to, there's some fine lines to tread there, and we'll see if they're able to actually walk that tightrope, because if not, you and I are going to be commenting a lot on some of the scenes in the original trilogy and The Hobbit, and just joking about how they don't fit with the Rings of Power.
My dear Bagginses and Boffins.